Hi everybody, I'm Amanda Hilburn. I am a palette knife artist. I do mixed media work also, but I'm mostly known for my palette knife work. And I'm so excited to be here in your group and be invited by Heidi to teach you a tutorial on painting a winter or Christmas wreath with a palette knife. So we're going to get started, and the colors that we're going to be using today are Indian turquoise, Marina mist, clover, bright green, alizarin crimson, burnt umber, and white. So let's get started. Okay, for this tutorial, we're going to use an 8x10 canvas. I'm going to use this palette knife that has the sharper tip on it. I'm going to use a wide flat brush. This is a number 12. And I'm going to use a small flat brush, which is a number 2. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cover the entire canvas with this Indian turquoise. So get some of that out. I'm going to go ahead and get out some of this Marina mist, which is just a lighter blue. I'm going to use my wide brush to just cover the whole thing. I'm going to do my strokes downward because we want it to look like weathered wood. And usually grains in palettes and wood pieces are going vertically like this. All right, and I'm going to be working wet on wet, so we don't have to wait in between for this to dry. We need to actually have a good bit of paint on the canvas, and then taking some of our lighter color, we're going to pull it down on top. Just make some lighter streaks. It'll help you to make your straight lines if you hold your brush like this rather than like this. And just kind of pull with your whole arm and not just your wrist. And remember, the acrylic paint will dry darker than it is when it's wet. So I'm really going to lighten up an area right here because this is kind of going to be the middle where our wreath will be. All right, so you guys can finish your sides with the same color if you want to do that. I'm going to skip that part just for the sake of saving some time. But if you want to go ahead and use this same paint to finish off the sides of your canvas, then you could do that now. Okay, next we're going to get out our burnt umber. It's pretty thick. It may be old. I will say this, most of the time when I'm painting in my tutorials, in my own classes, I use a thicker paint, but for the sake of allowing you guys to teach this as a paint party, I wanted to use craft paints because I know that is probably what you guys are going to be using more than the more professional, highly pigmented, expensive stuff, you know, in the tube. But you can use that. You can use either one. But I had the craft paint and I know that it works, so I wanted to go ahead and do that with you guys. You can use craft paints with a palette knife. It's a little bit of a challenge sometimes if you're using something like the apple barrel, which is a little bit thinner, but most of the time the folk art and the deco art are going to be thick enough that you can make it stay on your knife. Okay, so now we're going to do the wood panels. So I'm just taking my knife and I'm going to dip it in here just sideways like this, and I'm going to eyeball it, and we're just going to make a line right across here. And it doesn't have to be exact. It can be messy. Messy is the way that I normally do things. So we're going to pull some lines down here and make boards. And they don't have to be exact either, which is totally part of the fun. And some areas may be a little bit thicker and a little bit more ragged than others. All right, and I'm going to make my wood here a little bit even, I can't talk, even more messy. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay. So I'm just taking some of this brown on my knife and just pulling it around lightly in a few spots. And that's just going to make it look like it's nice and weathered. And you could even make some spots that are a lot weathered. You could do something around your edges. Just making it messy. All right. So we've got our messy palette wood here. And now we're going to start on the wreath part. So if you have something that is round in your shop or hanging around in your classes, then you can use it to sort of trace out your circle here. But it doesn't have to be exact because the wreath that we're going to make is not a complete perfect circle anyway. But what I'm going to do is just take this smaller flat brush and some of this brown, and I'm just going to kind of start here in the middle and lightly touch it, go around in a circle or an oval, whatever it turns out being. And that's where our wreath is going to live. Okay, so now we need to get out our greens, and this clover green is going to be the darker green, and then we're going to also have a brighter green that is going to help to kind of highlight our greenery. So go ahead and get both of those out. When I teach classes, I try to emphasize the fun element, because I don't want everybody to be so tense and caught up in making things perfect. So when you're starting to make your wreath, I want you to be loose and just have fun with it. So we're going to have some areas that are leaves. So we're just going to take our knife and just kind of make the idea of some leaves. Let's do some here and maybe a few here. I think my knife is getting too much paint on it. Right, then we'll do a couple of little ones here maybe. So we're going to have leaves, we're going to have some pine cones, and we're going to have some little areas that are going to be like Christmas tree branches, like a little fir tree branches. All right, so we just went around and made a few little places that look like they could be leaves with our clover. And now I'm going to take this bright green and we're going to mix it in there a little bit. So painting with palette knives gives you the freedom to really loosen up and not worry so much about all the little tiny details. And that's one thing that I really love about using knives. Okay, next let's find where our pine cones are going to live. Okay, so I'm going to just use this brown here in the side of my knife again, and I'm just going to make some lines. So let's say we have the base of the pine cone here, and these lines are just going to build something like a little pyramid. And it's just going to get smaller and smaller until we get to what would be the tip of it. Okay? And you can go back and make the base of it bigger if you feel like you need to. It doesn't have to be even on both sides. It just needs to have the idea of looking like a pine cone, where it's just building layers of lines. And we'll come back and highlight it in just a minute. The base needs to be wider than the tip. That's the main thing you need to keep in mind. Okay, and they can go just about anywhere in all directions. And we're going to be using the rule of odds here, and I'm going to put an odd number of pine cones here in this painting. Right, so that's 3. Let's put one smallish one here. I'll say smallish, and it's growing a little bit bigger. Okay. And then we'll put one more right about here just to even it out a little bit, or make it odd is what I'm really doing. An odd number of things usually look better. All right, let's grab some white. We're going to highlight in these pine cones with just some little taps of white. We're also going to add some white to our leaves. So let's mix that with a little bit of that darker green. So we don't want it to be too white. And just add some light green highlights in a few spots on these leaves just to kind of separate them. Okay. So now we've got our pine cones and our leaves, and we're going to add the fir branches next. And you're going to be amazed at how much this changes and looks more like a Christmassy winter wreath just by adding these little fir branches. Okay, I'm using the side of my knife again. And here's what we're going to do. We're just going to make a line with our knife. And then we're going to cut in all these little branches on either side of that line. Okay, and then we may want to do some just to fill in these areas where we've got gaps. And you can switch back and forth with your greens. So you're just making lines. And you can get as messy as you want to with this, and it's still going to look really good. Because you're just kind of making a filler right now and filling in some of these spots where you want to have that look of the fir tree. Okay, so you want to try to keep going around in a circle, of course, but these fir branches can come out from the edge. And some of them can be thicker and some of them can be thinner, and it's still going to give you the look of those fir branches. But we're kind of working around, we're making them kind of in the same direction, if you notice that. So just these little lines like this will really, really help to make it look more winter-like and fill up all these gaps in here. And next we're going to add our red berries, and that's really gonna make it look even more Christmassy. Okay. All right, so now we've got a good bit of our little fir branches placed in there. We've got our pine cones in the right areas. So now let's work on our berries. This is just that alizarin crimson, which is like a really deep, pretty cranberry red. And this is super simple also. I'm just going to use the tip of my knife, swirl it around, and start making little berries. And I'm going to do them in threes. So there's 3 there. And you can just go around and kind of fill in where you think you need to have a little bit more something. There may be a spot where you could just put 1. Let's do that in a few places. So we got 3s and 1s. They don't all have to be exactly the same size either. Let's put some right here. All right, now let's really make those shine and add a little bit of white. So we're just going to do the same thing. Swirl that around. Go back in there and add a little bit, not too much. Just a little bit of white. It's actually turned into pink. I'm not adding bright white. Okay, and if you wanted to, of course, you can take a little bit of your white and your brown, and you can go in and make some brown branches here and there, just to fill in some other places if you feel like you need to, or even take some white with your green and highlight some of these little branches. You can just lay your knife down and highlight some areas here and there just to give it a little more dimension. But that part is totally optional. But I hope that you guys enjoyed this and that it helped you to see how you can use your palette knife and really work some really quick and fun and interesting textures and designs into your paint parties.